So Iran has strongly condemned President Trump's tweet that our colleague Steve just mentioned. A state television report on Saturday quoted Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson as saying that the Iranian people give no credit to the deceitful and opportunist remarks of U.S. officials or Mr. Trump. Okay, to break this all down is Josh Dawsey. He's a White House reporter for The Washington Post. Josh, thanks so much for being here
Thanks for having
on
me.
this busy tweet storm weekend from the president. So I want to break down this Iran tweet first. The president essentially saying Iranian citizens have every right to protest. They should be allowed to do so. The regime should not interfere. Now, it struck me by reading this that this sounds an awful lot like what President Obama used to say when he was in office about the Iranian people. What do you think?
Well, I think it illuminates the challenge for an American president. What exactly can you do? You can show sharp rhetoric. You can go after protesters. You can condemn the regime. But at the end of the day, you have limited options. The president has struck a different tone on Iran than President Obama on the nuclear deal. He's criticized it. His Justice Department is looking into what the Obama administration did on the deal and its relations with Hezbollah. But at the end of the day, there's not a ton the president can do right now other than monitor this and sense what is going on.
And try and draw a very careful distinction between opposition to the Iranian government, the regime, and support for Iranian citizens. I think that's sort of the position he's come around to on this issue. I want to just switch tacks quickly because this is Tweet Storm Saturday. The president tweeted a poll about his approval ratings. He said, "While the fake news loves to talk about my so-called low approval rating, Fox and Friends just showed that my rating as of December 28th was approximately the same as President Obama's on the same day in 2009, which was 47%. What do you think about that?
The president loves to cite the Rasmussen poll, which often shows him higher than the other polls. The president's approval ratings for the first year have been historically low for a first-year president. They've hovered often in the 30s and the low 40s. They've slipped and slid here and there. But the Rasmussen poll shows him higher. And the president often cites internal polls that he's shown from the RNC, which poll more about his base and or what do his voters on the campaign trail still think of him. And to a large degree, most of them remain with President Trump. So his overall numbers are not very good. That said, his base numbers remain fairly high.
So it sounds like you're saying this Rasmussen poll is nice news for the president, but it's not necessarily indicative of where the national average is right now. We can get that more accurately from some other polls.
And we know the president is a connoisseur of polls. I mean, he's reading polls every day. He's looking at the Gallup tracking polls. He looks at internal polls. He even looks at polls of candidates in different states and wants to know what's this governor doing or how's this senator doing. He's fascinated with what the numbers say. And we often see him tweet about that.
What about foreigners? Is he concerned with what folks from around the world think about him? Do you think he checks those numbers wherever they're available?
I think that's less of a concern for this president. I think this president has been dominated more by domestic politics than anything else. And a lot of his decisions, even on the foreign stage, have been, with an eye towards back home. He's often tending domestic politics even when he's making foreign decisions about what to do in other countries.
That's a good point. And so now we've got, 48 hours left in 2017,
That's right?
So looking forward to 2018, it's shaping up to be, with the midterms, it's going to be a tough uphill battle year for the White House in terms of implementing the rest of its agenda. You say in Washington Post this week that Chief of Staff General John Kelly is cognizant of this challenge, and he is doing everything he can to prep the White House and gear up for it. You think his first big move is going to be some sweeping staff changes inside the West Wing. Can you break that down for us a little bit?
Sure. So after the defeat in Virginia for the Republican there and in Alabama, where Roy Moore lost, there's been some concern inside the White House on 2018 with the president's numbers not being great, a difficult landscape for Republicans. Plus, traditionally, it's always hard in a midterm election for the party in power to keep the seats. So I think the White House is trying to bolster their political shop ahead of the 2018 elections, bring some new people into the fold, try to get a strategy with their outside groups, with their super PACs, really try to put together a cohesive effort to either, keep the current status quo or to stem any losses.
So it sounds like the White House is going to get its own political internal house of cards in line before they look out to the midterms. Josh Dawsey, we've got to leave it there so much.
Thanks so much.
From the Washington Post. Thanks for joining us.